Jean-Pierre's shocking press conference. You heard about the United States taking this abstention at the United Nations on a vote involving Israel. Now, I want to put this into context. 3 times before, the U.S. voted against this kind of resolution on Israel, calling for a ceasefire that doesn't condemn Hamas, nor does it require or even ask Hamas to turn and to give over the hostages that still remain, which is estimated around 100. Some of those are alive. Some might be bodies, but it's still a very large number. And that was excluded from the language. So the U.S., the last 3 times, voted against this. And it didn't pass. But this time at the United Nations, the United States decided we'll go along with the language that doesn't include the hostages being released, that doesn't condemn Hamas and their acts of terrorism on October 7th that led to the conflict that is still ongoing. And by doing so, this resolution moves forward. Now, a resolution from the Security Council is a step in the wrong direction against Israel. But what we're most concerned about, and why we're watching it very carefully through our team, both at ACLJ Jerusalem, our international team, our NGO status at the UN, is that the United States making these moves politically over time, especially when it comes to the Biden administration and the left. And we can play for you because Karine Jean-Pierre was asked directly about it. It sounds like you're playing politics with this because you've now changed your policy, based on 18 to 29-year-olds who are protesting at their college campuses? Take a listen.
This is not about politics. It's not. The president does not lead his national security or things that are the right thing to do in this sense, right? Getting that hostage deal, making sure hostages come home, including, as I said, over and over again, American hostages, getting that humanitarian aid into Gaza and making sure that we believe that would lead to a ceasefire. That is not about politics. That is about the right thing to do.
Logan, the language doesn't include getting the hostages out, and it doesn't include Hamas. No condemnation of Hamas. All it does is say if they get humanitarian aid in, maybe then Hamas will do something good. And we've seen time over time they've gotten humanitarian aid in this entire time, and they sell it or steal it.
Yeah, we know where it's actually going. That's been the concern the entire time. And sure, I mean, maybe there's part of them going, you know what, we're not going to be able to get them to free the hostages, so whatever, throw in the towel. But it's sad when this is the place we got to in America, where you're able to say, okay, let's take out all the rough language. What was the rough language? Getting hostages out. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, this is a clear move by the Biden administration. Looking at their poll numbers, which are not good in younger voters, where they typically, the left relies on. It's not just the college vote either, Logan, that we're talking about. We're talking. A lot of people say 18 to 29. I'd say it's more like 18 to 40, 18 to 39, really. And we've seen a shift in
I would even say,
the Christian community. We've seen a shift amongst definitely on college campuses getting more radical in support of and anti-Israel, but in support of Palestinian causes, regardless of the brutality of the attack on October 7th. It didn't take long for everybody to just forget October 7th and just focus on the fact that Israel's response, as if they're just attacking Gaza for no reason.
For no reason. And I think you're right in that age demographic. I think it maybe even skews a little older, where you have people that are in college now, like I said, maybe up through adults. If you're on the left, essentially, you have to be. This is your talking point.
You've become anti-Israel.
That's your part of your platform now.
Yeah, and so I want to take your calls. That 1-800-684-3012. The fact that this used to be an issue that united Republican and Democrats, and now there's only a handful of Democrats left in both the House and the Senate that stand with Israel. There are a handful, but they are dwindling. Some people think champions are born, that it's a title that requires something only a handful can ever possess.
There are times in our lives that we are called, every one of us, to step up and serve a cause greater than ourselves.
Even when the loudest voices in the room say it's wrong, that it can't be done. It can be a difficult stand, but it's one any of us can make, including you.
You can be the change. You can make that difference.
You can be a champion. We cannot do what we do without you.
By becoming a monthly donor, you can become a champion of life.
A champion of liberty, a champion of freedom.
Please join us. Become an ACLJ champion today. This response from the United States and the Biden administration, what I'm concerned about is that by the time we get to election, they're going to be not just abstaining on votes, but they're going to be like voting against Israel at the United Nations. So they've already gone from voting against these bad resolutions for Israel. So that was good. But they've moved from that to abstaining. And then the likely next move is that you are so upset by if Israel continues this, what I believe is justified war against Hamas until they deliver those hostages and cease their attacks on Israel, that eventually, if they don't do this resolution, are you going to actually go and vote yes to start actually condemning Israel? Are you going to join those countries at the United Nations? Is the U.S. going to join in that? I mean, it's the likely next step if this administration certainly gets another 4 years in the White House.
A reason you may be joining us right now on YouTube. A lot of you just joined. You may have seen the headline, Jordan, of our headline right now is exposed. KJP's shocking press conference. I think we should restate what happened and what we can do about it.
Sure. So at this press conference, Karine Jean-Pierre said, it was after the UN Security Council vote, the U.S., of course, decided to abstain on a vote that called for a ceasefire in the war in Israel and Hamas. This was a ceasefire that did not require, it does not require any kind of release of hostages, nor does it condemn Hamas for their attacks on October 7th. The entire reason Israel is still engaged in this conflict, which, yes, is, of course, is endangering the lives of Palestinians in Gaza because of what happened October 7th. They have to respond as a sovereign nation, and they still haven't got all of their hostages back. If Hamas wanted most of this conflict to come to a close, they would get those 100 hostages, whether some are bodies and some are alive, to Israel, and guess what? Palestinian citizens would probably not be facing any more of these air raids, at least for a period of time, if Hamas also stopped firing at Israel. That's all they have to do. But they're unwilling to do that, and they've got the UN backing them, saying they can keep hostages, they can keep firing on Israel, but Israel's got to stop. And the U.S. has voted no on that resolution 3 times because of that. It makes no sense. This vote, they just abstained, which means it moved forward. So they're very close to making a vote that is actually anti-Israel at the United Nations, going a step further than the Obama-Biden administration. And they're right, especially I think if you give them another 4 years. And it's because of people like AOC. Even though there's only 5 or 6 of these members of Congress that are in Congress, Logan, elected, this is the base of the Democrat Party right now. They all are echoing her message. Take a listen to her last week on the House floor, bite one.
If you want to know what an unfolding genocide looks like, open your eyes. It looks like the forced famine of 1.1 million innocents. We must write our story in this moment of what it means and who we are as Americans. And our story must be not that we were good men who did nothing.
First of all, the genocide, or what she's tried to determine as a genocide, the 1 million people she's talking about are not all innocents. They decided to elect a terror group years ago. They've decided to allow that terror group to be part of their families. I mean, I think within families in the Gaza Strip, maybe there's connections within all of them to Hamas. They did that with doctors. They did that with the UN Refugee and Relief Agency, and it was like 1 out of every 10 employees was working for Hamas. One out of 90% of employees had a family member as part of Hamas. So she says 1.1 million innocents. These are all people who are celebrating what happened on October 7th. And Logan, you don't get to go into a sovereign country, rape, murder, and kill, take hostages, and expect a sovereign country like Israel not to respond, and that response to be pretty darn harsh.
And I want to say, there's a reason we're still actively working. I read all the comments, or as many as I can. They go by fast with thousands of you watch. And there are some people like, well, I'm waiting to know if I'm voting for Trump. It's like, we have to be proactively working right now. Number one, of course, it's no guarantee President Trump wins. You got to keep going. Number two, the work can't stop because this is people's lives on the lines.
Oh, yeah. A lot of horrible things to Israel could happen between now and
January. At best case scenario.
Best case scenario is the U.S. stays, maybe just abstains, but that means these resolutions are going to start moving forward. And Security Council resolutions aren't like General Assembly resolutions. I mean, at some point, you could have, you could envision they throw in peacekeepers. They've done it before. They did it in Lebanon, and you know what those peacekeepers do? They help Hezbollah target Israelis.
Yeah, and you may not, in the U.S. may have a better point of view.
I did a whole thing in law in my LLM degree in Georgetown on how the peacekeepers between Israel and Hezbollah on the Lebanese border during one of their last conflicts were literally pointing out for Hezbollah the Israel locations so that Hezbollah could target and kill those Israeli troops.
Our executive producer, Will, brought up a good point, which is also, if Trump is to win, then you have a couple months there where it could be an all-out war from the United States on Israel, where they just pull out all the stops, where the Democrats pull out all the stops, knowing that the Trump administration is on the way. So it could actually get somewhat more dangerous for Israel for a short term.
But I just wanted people to know right now that we're still heavily involved in what's happening in Israel. I mean, you've heard from Jeff Balaban, who oversees our office in Jerusalem. You've known since the October 7th attacks what we've done for the hostages, if it's bringing them to Washington, if it's bringing them to Spain, throughout Europe, to bring attention to it, we have. The Speaker of the House is bringing attention to them. Some have been released. Some have lost their lives. 100 still remain. We do not know the status. We don't know if all 100 are alive, but we do know about 100 hostages still remain. And yet, at the Security Council at the United Nations, where the U.S. has a permanent seat, and also that means a veto, and they can veto anything. That means all it takes the U.S. to stop it. There's a resolution that was put forward by the U.S. to call for a ceasefire, but that ceasefire also mentioned that you have to return the hostages, both living and dead, and stop the attacks on Israel. And that then Israel would stop the attacks on the Gaza Strip. And the U.S., that was voted down by two permanent members. It was China and Russia. So you'd think the U.S. would not accept their ceasefire resolution, which removed any language condemning Hamas, Logan. I mean, think about that. Not even condemning Hamas, not even condemning Hamas for what they did to people on October 7th. Leave out the rest of the war. Just what they did to children on October 7th and women and the elderly and the hostage taking. It's not there. You won't find it. They don't talk about hostages. And yet the U.S. veto it, so it didn't pass because they could have done a veto, and that means that would have killed the resolution. No, they abstained for the first time. After 3 times voting no, they abstained. And Logan, they say,
Karine Jean-Pierre, supposed to be a win for us.
Karine Jean-Pierre says it's not about politics, as we played in that soundbite. It's all about politics because the base of their party has been the younger voter or that kind of college campus liberal city voter. And that voter, in this last, I'd say, Logan, since October 7th, has become radicalized in support of the Palestinian movement with like blinders on their eyes to the violence that caused this conflict.
Yeah, I'd say it's probably the week after October, when the response started happening.
Yeah.
We said, I remember being on text threads immediately saying,
that takes any action,
the world will change. It'll go from you two saying we stand with the Stars of David and the children of Israel to being like, well, now there's problems on both sides. And they are the ones probably on the most oddly conservative side of it. We've obviously had a lot of liberal voices speaking out specifically. We also have some great voices, by the way, like our friend John from Five for Fighting, who has been out there, Patricia Heaton, and some people who have been friends of this organization, friends of this broadcast, who are out there actually doing the work and trying to spread the word. I posted a great speech that John gave to a bunch of high school students and a bunch of college students. I encourage everyone to go watch that. I think I posted it on my X account, so go do that. We'll be right back.
Life, in its essence, is built of moments, experiences, and connections that define our existence. It is a journey filled with opportunities for growth, learning, and the formation of relationships that enrich our souls. Life is precious because it offers the chance to make a difference, to leave a mark on the world, however big or small. It is a gift that demands our attention, care, and reverence, encouraging us to live fully, love deeply, and leave a legacy of kindness and compassion for future generations. At the ACLJ, we choose life.
Welcome back to Secular overseas with the European Center for Law and Justice as we are renewing our work there. Of course, continues on at the International Court of Human Rights and also at the European Parliament. And you've probably, if you follow kind of conservative politics in the U.S. and around the world, you've seen the rise of conservative politics all over Europe. So we're kind of, as we do with the U.S., preparing, like we have our team in D.C., we're preparing the team at the ECLJ and working together on working with these new governments that have kind of been an unknown to Europe for the last 3 or 4 decades, that share a lot of our views on issues of life, on issues of support for Israel, economic issues, democracy, voting, freedom of the press, freedom of speech. So again, it's kind of this whole new world. And what we are seeing then too with our team at the UN is this ability to reach and put pressure on these countries like Pakistan. And we've talked about the Shahzad case, in prison, on death row, and Cece Howell, who was in Geneva for us at the United Nations. So our team there was able to deliver an oral intervention at the Human Rights Council. These were on video. You haven't seen this one yet. This is a new one, and we wanted to play it for you just to show you. With the ACLJ team is all over the world, active for the persecuted, active for Israel, active for you here in the United States with those 12 pending cases before the U.S. Supreme Court, making sure you have the ability to vote for the candidate of your choice in that last Supreme Court victory. But again, I want you to watch this or listen, if you're listening to the show, about what we're able to do at the UN in calling out Pakistan in front of all the ambassadors.
Giving the floor to the European Center for Law and Justice.
Thank you, Mr. President. Given the treatment of minority women in Pakistan, their forced religious conversions, and forced marriages, the ECLJ would like to commend Pakistan for recently adopting a bill raising the marriageable age for Christian girls from 13 to 16. Although that is a good step, it is still insufficient to fully protect these young Christian girls. The law should be consistent with the international standard, that is, anyone under 18 should not be allowed to marry. Additionally, with the new administration, we hope that Pakistan will finally take a serious look at the blasphemy cases in the country. The ECLJ's affiliate currently represents 5 innocent Christians in such cases. Shahzad Masih's and Amun Ayoub's cases have been brought before this council many times. We simply ask that the government establish mechanisms to sort out false accusations, stop prosecuting innocent people who face false allegations, and expedite cases that are pending. Amun Ayoub has spent over 10 years in prison. Shahzad Masih has spent over 6 years in prison. We stand ready to work with the authorities to address these issues and work together to fulfill our obligations for justice and the protection of human rights. And as the Pakistani representative said yesterday, justice delayed is justice denied, and we agree. Thank you.
And Cece and our team have done a great job, Logan, because it's not only at the UN Human Rights Council. We have the UN group on arbitrary detention, a number, I think it's 4 or 5 special rapporteurs just on the case involving Shahzad. I think we're very close there. Of course, until they're released and released safely and securely, you have to assume that their life is in danger. But that is what we're very close on. I want to remind people too, Pastor Saul, who we were working on For 7 years, he's been imprisoned in China for distributing Bibles. We began representing him 5 years ago when the family had kind of exhausted their domestic efforts. And ultimately, the ACLJ sticking with it with our international team. He has been released. He has not yet been returned to the United States, and I don't know, we don't have any indication yet that he's got to the U.S. Embassy yet, so we want to be very careful in not providing too much information about where he is, but I do want to let you know that he is out of prison, and that's an example, Logan, of the kind of work that we do that isn't, over and done even within like one term of a president. I mean, it's 7 years in the making, but it's worth it when you're talking about a human life.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is the work that the ACLJ does, whether you hear about it or not. I think it's important to know that a lot of things are happening behind the scenes. I know it's easy to say that, but it's just true. And when we were able to reveal facts like this, when you have a Pastor Saul, who you may have heard about 5 years ago, and then you may have thought, oh, they just stopped talking about it. Well, there's reasons things get, sometimes you have
quiet
to stop talking publicly because things are happening behind the scenes. And here's one of the proofs of that. He is free in the country, and we are doing what we can to get him back home to his family. But again, long term, these are 5, 6, 7 years, sometimes more in the making. And sadly, and even in American law, that is sort of the process here. Things don't work on a rapid, speed way. A lot of things happen just by sticking to it, going with the process, and winning and losing and winning again. Do you want to take some phone calls?
Absolutely.
Let's go to Joanne, who's calling in Ohio, watching on aclj.org, which we appreciate. You're on the air.
Hi, guys.
Hey.
Real quick, I remember your father saying after Trump won that those last 90 days were when Obama was going to do his worst. So this kind of goes along the same thing of what you were saying.
Yeah.
But that's not really why I called. I just want to acknowledge the passing of Joe Lieberman,
Sure.
a staunch supporter of Israel, spoke out against Hamas. I saw him a few days ago on Newsmax. I mean, this is such a tragedy. I mean, he's one of the few reasonable Democrats that were out there speaking truth, and I just think it needs to be acknowledged.
Yeah, absolutely. And, obviously we send our love and prayers to Joe Lieberman's family. Whether you agreed with them or disagreed with them on other topics, there were certain things, like a lot of old school Democrats, that we could agree with. And look, I would even know this is crazy. Until Chuck Schumer's weird turn against Netanyahu, Chuck Schumer was kind of one of those guys where you didn't agree with on almost anything, but was one of the leading voices in support of Israel when no one else was. Sadly, even he's been turned now. Right. Schumer in that situation going, once was the voice of, like, the one thing we could agree with him on was his pretty much unwavering Zionism.
Yes.
And now
that if he disagreed with Israel, it would be behind the scenes. He wouldn't take a speech, give a major speech calling for an Israeli president to be removed. Another country's duly elected leader.
Again, someone just dealing with the sad society of where the Democratic Party is right now.
I have one friend who I would say is Democrat, and Jared Moskowitz, a congressman from Florida, he's just kind of a thorn in the side of Republicans on some of the
Fox
committees.
News a lot, which probably says a lot.
Yeah, he's kind of a funny guy, and he is funny, and again, I think he tries to lighten up some of the more heavy things on that Congress is taking on. But when it comes to Israel, he's got very strong support, and he's a young guy, so he's even in a minority within a minority of his party. Yeah. That he's got that support, and that again, the pressure in the party is to not. And I think that is why it is so sad to lose.
And there is a nerves of the more sort of libertarian-leaning version of the Republican Party. Mm-hmm. The more starting, we've kind of seen that with Rogan, and that kind of crowd does
really
seem
need
to
be so supportive.
Yeah, or what? And to start look, I think question authority at all times.
Sure,
there's no reason to even. I'm not even saying you have to agree with the actions that Israel is taking, but you can at least agree that there's a purpose of why they're taking these actions.
Yes, and they're not. Again, when it comes to Israel, Israel's not asking for our troops. We actually do a lot of research and technology together. A lot of the technology developed in Israel because it's close combat fighting, including the Iron Dome, is so that when we have massive troop deployments, we're able to set up those systems overhead of our troops. Yeah, they use it to protect their citizens, so that's a joint effort between the United States and Israel. That's something that we benefit from as well because we get to see how it works in a country that unfortunately has to deal with it regularly citizens being fired upon by rocket fire. So I think that's where the libertarians need to check it out, check for a moment, and realize we are gaining from that. We gain from that relationship. It's not just a give from the U.S., it's a give and take.
Yeah, let's go ahead and take this call because it kind of ties in. Elaine in New York on line 1. You're on the air.
Hey,
watch
Elaine.
it on YouTube.
Hi. I just wanted to ask why, if the world is so concerned about the Palestinian people, that nobody has offered to take the refugees, take the women, take the children, open the gates to Egypt, even if it's temporarily, just to get rid of the terrorists.
See, Elaine, I don't know if we could pull the picture that quickly. How secure the border is between Egypt and the Gaza Strip. I mean, it is, Logan, like, it is not even like our southern border. I mean, it's got the walls up, fences up, and literally every 2 seconds.
Yeah, we've been there.
You've got troop movers and like that are guns out, ready to go if anybody tries to climb that fence, touch that fence.
It's a real border.
It's an armed border with military because they do not trust what a mass movement of migrants from those territories would do inside their own countries. The Jordanians tried it, and a king was killed. So guess what? They're not going to be a part of this. So that has been one of the issues, is that some of those countries have opened up before historically, and it's been to their detriment. Now, I will say the reason why internationally you get this support, Logan, is that look at the money in the Arab world. The Arab world has got money to throw around.
Yeah,
just like China's doing.
Look, there's
the Arab world.
Reason they did actually during the Abraham Accords and all that strive for peace, and it may not have been because they were agreeing with Israel all of a sudden politically. It's because the financial incentives were absurd. Because all of a sudden you had Israelis able to visit these countries, vacation. You could have a lot, and they're very close to each other.
They could visit their holy sites that were in Jerusalem. You could do business together. You could fly. I mean, again. There was that hope that, again, that the U.S. is kind of centered on internationally, which is that if you can economically work together and build things together, that you're not going to be enemies. Now, that hasn't necessarily played out in every country. China's a good example of that. But in the most part, the Biden administration just didn't even try to continue that. They just went right back to the same theory, which is no peace in the Middle East until the Palestinian question is solved. So we're going to force that back on all of these states, and they're going to all have to do the Palestinian thing. You've got the picture of the border? Yeah, check it out. That is what a secure border looks like. And that's the Egyptian border with Gaza Strip. Look at that, Logan.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you'd kind of somewhat hope we'd have a border.
Supermax prison.
Yeah, it's pretty intense looking.
Double fencing, tall. So, again, when they say, the Israelis, they're not doing anything to help humanitarily, look at Egypt. Nobody's getting across that border if they don't want them to. Not even thinking about it.